Hey everyone, the other day we hit a sub goal on stream to play Smite 1, and thank you, by the way, for helping us reach that goal. But it was actually the first time that I played Smite 1 in quite a while. And while I had fun, and nothing will really ever replace the memories and experience that was Smite 1, I instantly started noticing when I was playing things that I liked more about Smite 2, and I started to write some of it down, so I figured I'd make a video talking about all that stuff. I've been playing Smite 2 a lot more lately, of course, preparing for the Vegas tournament, but also for reasons that I'll talk about more throughout this video. So all this stuff was kind of fresh in my mind. So now I've been critical of high-res, especially through some of these early alphas. So everything I'm about to talk about, I really genuinely feel. You know, I've taken breaks. I've played other games because Smite 2 just wasn't fun or good enough at the time. And in fact, even right now, there's a ton of games that I can play that I actually really enjoy. But I still find myself coming back to Smite 2 now. And when the open beta comes out later on this month or sometime soon, I think you'll understand why. There's been a lot of dooming and misinformation, especially info based on people's experiences from some of the early alphas, which granted were quite rough, but the difference between those patches and the game today is quite insane. And I think there's a lot of people that just don't like the game anymore, whether it's Smite 1 or Smite 2, but they're using Smite 2 as a way to vent that frustration instead of just moving on. So for those of you who haven't played since then, or haven't played at all, and especially those of you waiting for free to play this month, I want to talk about some things that I think are already better in Smite 2 than its predecessor. Hehe. Now keep in mind, all this stuff is just technical upgrades. When it comes to actual content in the game, there are still things I like about Smite 1 more still, of course, like the selection of gods or certain things on the map like the tikis. But all that stuff will come in time. And they made a concerted effort to add in all the stuff that people really enjoyed from Smite 1 and also change the things that people didn't like in the early alpha tests of Smite 2. And I mean basically everything. They're listening to all feedback. So who would have thought that them listening to everybody's feedback to make the game better has actually made the game better. But they've also been working their tails off to get everything ported over, so props to them for that. But just to reiterate a little bit, this stuff that I'm going to talk about was really only made possible solely or partly off going to UE5 and starting over with good code instead of the spaghetti code that they were compounding on top of for the past 12 years. And while individually some of these things seem small, this stuff adds up quite quickly to a better feeling game, especially once you're used to it. But anyway, let's get into these bullet points because we have quite a few. I'll start with some of the big stuff. So one thing you can do in Smite 2 that makes the game feel so much better is you can actually use your actives and active items while casting abilities. It makes the game feel so much more fluid and rewards good play and multitasking. So for example, if I'm like Ymir support and I'm trying to peel for my team, I can charge my Ymir and while casting it, pop my shell for my teammates to keep them alive or get them through a wall that they need to get through. Or if I'm Sobek ulting someone and they have just a little too much HP for my execute, I can sunder them while still lurking in the waters to come up and execute them. The best example of that is actually Combat Blink, which is still the coolest relic to have, especially when you can use it while casting. You can Aries ult, then blink further away to pull enemies farther. You can charge Chalk ult, then blink right before it hits. And there's so many more examples of this, but these interactions alone feel so much more empowering than the animation locks and the single input monotony of Smite 1. Next thing is the graphics. Now, I'm never really one to care about graphics in any game I play, especially competitive ones, but I've really noticed it lately with Smite 2. The game really looks beautiful, and they're still upgrading it. And when I go back and look at Smite 1, of course, you know, it has its charm, and I love it, but in all honesty, Smite 2 kind of makes it look like Play-Doh, and it even makes the early alpha tests look horrible compared to what it is now. This is less so my area of expertise, so I'm interested to hear some of your comments down below about it, at least the ones of you who, you know, have seen the game lately. But I just can't see how some people still think, like, looks-wise, that it's ugly. And Hi-Re's art team has always been one of the best in the business, no glaze there, and I feel like it's starting to show in games, so. But also on that note, relic and active item visuals when they're used in game are so much more noticeable in Smite 2 that the other day I didn't even realize it when I was playing Smite 1 when people were actually using their relics. Another huge thing coming in the open beta is aspects. This is one of the biggest things to make the game really feel worthy of a sequel in my opinion. Aspects basically allow you to play a slightly different version of a character to open up their role diversity and build diversity. But think about how much content and uniqueness can come from a single change. Let's take King Arthur for example. The fact that he could crit. There was tons of videos, there was me trolling in the SPL, an entire meme with aggro is born from a single silly interaction, and like each aspect can do that for every single god, and it can give mains a new way to play their favorite characters if they want to, and others a reason to maybe return to a character they didn't really like as much. For example, I've been playing the raw aspect in these in-houses. It allows you to ult your teammates. It also allows you to put your 3 on teammates, attach it to them, but the cool part is that you can ult your teammates, and honestly, it's just fucking cool. It's just fun. Like, really, aspects alone make me want to play this game, full stop. Then there's the new God Tech, which has also shown what they can do with UE5. Aladdin, who's coming out in the open beta, is probably the coolest character ever added to Smite. He has a fucking Spider-Man wall run, he's got an ISO Force 1v1 ult, He has his own item that he can grant wishes from, and he barely has any bugs. If they tried adding that character to Smite 1, the whole fucking servers would have caught on fire and exploded. And then Hekate's a ton of fun. Mordred he's okay, but you can't hit on him all, and at least his aspect is a lot of fun. It should probably just be how his base kit is. But anyway, the potential in future gods is also there, and of course reworked old and horrible kits from Smite 1 can be changed and made cooler with new tech, or even small tech plus ones like Baron's Brew being a throwable. Also, to add on to that, the speed of which they're adding these Smite 1 gods to Smite 2, you'd honestly expect way more game-breaking bugs, but it just hasn't been the case. And in fact, I'd argue even small changes to Smite 1 almost always broke the game more than what's happened recently with Smite 2. Next thing is the launch and rejoin speed. I mean, if you get disconnected from a game in Smite 1, good luck, because it'll probably take you a few business days to get back in and relaunch the game. But in Smite 2, it probably only takes like 30 seconds unless you have an absolute toaster. And the same goes for jungle practice, which also has more customizable features. For example, you can give bots the items to test out builds, you can reset their HP, and I'm sure in the near future, you'll even be able to go into jungle practice while you're queuing for a game. So that's a W. Another huge tech thing they just implemented in Smite 2 is CC buffering. And basically what that does is if you cast an ability before you're CC'd, it will always go off with some exceptions. No more hearing your ability but having it canceled, being pulled back to the ground even though you clearly leaped away, stuff like that. It's a way to nerf CC in the game while increasing fluidity, and I think it feels great so far from testing. But to go even further, in Smite 1, even without CC, your abilities often just get canceled, seemingly just from using your kit itself. Like, so I played Rama the other day in the viewer games, and the amount of times I clicked my dash and it made a sound but didn't go off just because I had just clicked another ability or was like autoing or using like a relic, it was honestly baffling. And that kind of stuff just doesn't really happen in Smite 2. Now, I'm sure there's some examples here and there, but they're making a really concerted effort to stop that from happening because it's one of the most frustrating parts of playing Smite 1. Some of the smaller stuff that I think adds up is, one, you can right-click to purchase in the shop, which feels so good once you're used to it. The interact button feels nice, especially for picking up buffs or taking TPs. And I think they could cook even more with it with new content once their bandwidth is, freed up a little bit from just porting over all the gods. And speaking of which, being able to hold multiple buffs feels great. Being able to cancel your TPs feels great. And then being able to move items around in your build or your consumables also feels great. Also, auto-canceling in general, in my opinion, feels better on most gods, especially now versus some of the early tests. And then, of course, there's a lot of issues that plagued what felt like all of Smite 1's existence that have been fixed. Like, you can actually change your audio settings without the game absolutely shitting itself, which feels like a miracle. The UI editor is coming soon. Text and voice chat will be in open beta. Now, don't quote me on this, but I bet they'll even take inspiration from Dota and Deadlock and have a thorough in-game build system where you can look up pros builds or make your own and publish them and find others through a search bar. But yeah, and I'm sure there's even more cool stuff coming down the pipeline that was only made possible by upgrading to UE5. But anyway, that's just all I wrote down after one day of returning to Smite 1, all from my memory, and I'm sure there's more. But of course, there's also probably some negative things that I'm leaving out, and I'm not in any way trying to say that Smite 2 is flawless, because I definitely don't think that. But what I'm trying to say is it's clearly an upgrade, and I think you should give it a shot because it's fun. And I think it's got even more potential than Smite 1. And of course, Assault, Joust, and Duel are coming with the open beta, along with everything that I just talked about. 10 more gods likely by the end of January. So it's a good time to give it a try. And if you hate it, come back and tell me in the comments why you hated it, and I'll hold the L. But also, if you're just someone who just hates high-res now because you're just so pissed about your skins, or you hate change, or you hate the things they've done in the past, I don't know if there's really anything left for you to do but move on. And I'm not trying to be rude. I understand some of your frustration, but honestly, just don't let what has been stop you from seeing what could be. That's all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about everything. What's better? What's worse between the two games? Did I miss something? And of course, hit that like button if you're optimistic and feeling passionate about Smite 2. And of course, I'll be making guides and content teaching you everything about the game once the open beta comes out within the next couple weeks, apart from when I'm in Las Vegas competing. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. Stay safe and healthy as always. Peace out.